Today I'm going to show you how to make Sara, and Sara is a fabulous storage container with lots of possibilities. I've done it so you've got two little pockets there, but you could expand this and make it bigger if you wanted to. But it's going to be a great addition to your craft desk, your workstation. Obviously it's got the carry handles there that you can pick it up and move it around as well. And I've got an idea on how to make it more stable as well. So it can sit on your desk like that, take all your tools, or you could put your quilting clips in there, you know, the sort of thing. To be perfectly honest, it could be for anywhere in the house. It could be for your bathroom, for your kitchen, anywhere where you need just a little storage container. And it's really diddy. Look at that, it's beautiful. All the fabrics that I'm using today for the samples here and the one I'm going to make are from Higgs and Higgs. So if you wanted to pop along there, I'm not on commission, but if you wanted to pop on along there and get the same fabrics, matches my top as it happens. So so we're going to make Sara. Now Sara is available as a download from my website. I'm just going to pop her somewhere. There we go. LizzyCurtis.com. Just look in the shop and you'll see the download patterns there. So we're going to try and follow the pattern, and I always say that and I always go off piste, but we'll give it our best shot. So obviously you've got all the instructions on the pieces that you need to cut, all the different sizes, and it's great because it's just literally rectangles. So there's no pattern pieces in this particular pattern. The twin, if you like, that comes with this, which is Sara. Sara is the bigger project, Sara is the smaller project, and that does have pattern pieces, but nothing complicated, I promise you. So you will obviously have printed out the pattern. You will have also cut out your fabrics, and you need to stabilise with the Decaville Light. It does need something a little bit more than a regular stabiliser. So Decaville Light, you know, I use it quite a bit at the moment, but it gives a little bit of rigidity. I would say it's better to use the Decaville Light than a wadding, because wadding wouldn't give you really a good bit of structure. So that's all I'm saying about that. So if you're in the US, there is an equivalent to Decaville Light, and I will try to remember to post it in the description below on the YouTube video. So this is our fabric. It's just glorious, isn't it? It's all purples and blues, and I've got the lining as a contrast. You don't have to do that. To be honest, I made my very first sample up in just a plain calico, and actually it's possibly my favourite because you could actually decorate it. You could use pens, and you can draw on it and make your own pattern and fabric. So I quite like calico for that. Right, let's crack on. So the first thing we need to do is to iron the short edges of our pouches. So the pouches that go inside, in this instance grey, in this instance purple, we're going to turn over the top and bottom short edges 1/4 inch. So I'll bring in my trusty little iron. Put it on a medium heat. We don't want anything too hot, and I just need my little mat, so my little one this time. Now when we go to sew these together, we actually open up the fold, so this is really just a temporary, it just is easier to do it now than later. So we're just folding over 1/4 inch on both short ends. Okay, just makes it so much easier a little bit later on. And I'm sure you'll find lots and lots of ways of using Sara. She's such a great little make, so useful. You don't have to have the handles, but I quite like the handles as an extra decorative feature. You could practice your applique and your free motion and do something around the sides on your outer fabric, something completely different. I think that would look quite fun. So there we are. So there is our, can you see both ends have just been folded over 1/4 inch. So now we're going to do right sides together. I'll do it on the overhead so you can see. Just bring in my little pin mouse. So can you see there's our folded edge there? But we're going to open it up now, just so it makes a neat finish. And you're going to pin, or you're going to clip, or you don't have to do either if you're confident. and put the pin heads to the outside, and then it's easier to undo. And obviously if you want another one here you can. Let's do the other one while we've got them here. So like I say, right sides together, so you're bringing your short ends to meet up. You're opening up the folds that you've just done with your iron. And need one more pin. There we go. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to stitch down both sides. So we're going to stitch from top to the fold, from the top to the fold on all the short sides. So let's bring in the machine. Now it's up to you whether you go from the fold up or whether you come down from the top. I'm not sure it makes a huge difference, but I would do the same on both sides. Little back stitch. Take the pins out as you go. Flip over so you're coming from the top again. It saves the whole thing twisting. I mean, to be honest, I don't think it really matters with a little pouch of this size, but it's nice to get into the habit. Now I shouldn't worry too much about back tacking the near the fold, because we're going to box these little pouches out. Flip it over. And do the same again. There we go. Okay. So now we've got our two pouches ready to go here. And if you hear the dog, she just loves to bark. So there we are. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to top stitch around the top. So where, do you remember where we folded it down? Well, just all you're going to do now. Now I would, well, it's up to you. You can either press your seams to one side or open them up. I'm going to open them up. So when I top stitch this, and there isn't a double fold over, so you're only folding once because we're going to encompass that raw edge into another seam. So open the sides up. You might want to do with this with your iron. If I can do this with my fingers and just open that up. Give it a finger press. So you're opening up like that, and you see, and then we fold down, and it makes a really neat little finish. And then we're going to top stitch that. So we'll pop that under the machine again. Now I'm going from, sometimes I'll stitch from the inside because I don't have a free arm, and sometimes I'll stitch from the outside. With this I'm stitching on the outside. It doesn't really make a huge difference. I think it depends on how big the project is, to be honest. And there is no bulk to these little pouches because they're only single layer of fabric. So I'm just opening up that seam as I go, giving it a finger press, folding down, and because we've already ironed those top seams, it's just so super easy. And sometimes we just want easy, don't we? And I think these would be great for Christmas presents, or holiday presents, because you could fill them with sweets and give them away, and then the recipient can use them for something else. So there's one. Can you see what we've done? So we've just top stitched, if I show you on the side, opened up that seam and top stitched all the way around. So we'll do the same again with the second one. Give it a little squidge. And then again, just fold down that 1/4 inch that you've ironed. And again, we're just coming to that side. So open it up. Give Give it a finger press, fold again. So these don't take too long. There's nothing hugely complicated about Sara. Okay, let's pop that to one side just for a moment. So that's both pouches done now, so they're lovely and neat. That's the top done. So now we have to box the bottoms. I'm just going to bring my iron in because this might help me a little bit in a moment. So it's 1 inch from the point, so I just need to bring in my ruler. So what you need to do is you either need to finger press or you'll have already pressed this seam open. If we go from the overhead, you'll see how I'm getting on with that. And you want to make sure that this seam here is sitting right in the centre. I mean, you don't have... I'll tell you what you could do. Let me just do this for you. I'm not keen on doing this because I don't really want a fold here. But what you could do is do a little bit of an iron there, so you've got a crease line, and then when you pop your seam flat, like now, you can find that ironed line and make sure that the side, can you see, if I try to fold that back, I'm trying to make sure you can see, but I'm not sure you can, like that. Can you see that sitting right in the centre? So if you iron this open, you'll end up with a little sort of triangle in the corner, and it's worth just spending a bit of time doing that. Do you see how that looks now? And then you just want to measure 1 inch from that point. So if I put that over the top, obviously you can get all your lines. If you can see, we've got a line here, and we can actually, as long as that's not too hot, we can actually mark that. Well, that's not a very good pen to be using. I remember that not working yesterday, so goodness knows why I kept it on my desk. There we are. You can see now I've drawn a line across. Now do that with all those corners, and then you can do all the stitching in one go. So like it again, just line that up, open that seam up, give it a little press, and like I say, you'll have that little triangle. It sort of folds over on itself. There we go. I don't think that seam at the top stayed flat, but that's okay. So there's our little point. So while it's hot, it may be tricky, but we'll give it a go. So just make sure your lines match up. So this part here is the actual 1 inch, and then I've got a line going along the seam, so I know that I've lined that up perfectly. I've got my 1 inch. And you can pin that while it's in that state, pin it. So give yourself a little crease line, not too much. Open that up and pop your seam so it sits on top of that crease. Open up the seam, get your point, give it a nice iron. And don't worry about, putting a crease in here, we can always take that out. Again, line up the 1 inch. While it's hot. It might be tricky. It's all right, actually. I'm surprised. We'll put a pin in there now. I've remembered to put a pin in. There we go. Pop that down as well. Follow that line. That way you know you've got it squared up, pretty much. If we had a bottom seam, then obviously that's what you would lie this top seam on. So there's that 1 inch, and draw. That was a little bit hot, I didn't give it a chance, but I can see the line. Little pin just to hold it together. and then we'll just stitch these boxy corners. And while I've got that other one handy, I'll just pop a pin in there just to hold it in the right position. Okay, so let's just do that. So it's you're stitching on the line. I would do a nice little back tack so it's nice and strong. And I wouldn't cut these off. These little triangles that we've created with the boxed corners, they actually add a little bit of stability, not much, but they add a little bit of stability to those outer box corners. Useful in other projects. We've done this before where we've kept the base in. I mean, there's little point cutting them off. You can if you want to. So there's my little pouch made now. There we go. And what I do suggest is that you get your iron and you push those points, those corners, those box corners towards the base. So we'll do that. So I'll leave this iron on medium now. So just spend a moment folding those back. So all you're doing is folding the triangle over and giving it a press. But like I say, if you want to cut these off, by all means, it might be something you think, oh, no, I don't know about that. I always like to think I'm giving you an option of what you can choose. You can choose. And the last one now. Okay, so I think that opening up the seam makes a really nice, neat job, I must admit. Right, so let's pop this to one side. I don't think we need the iron for a little while. So we've got to stage 4, so we've pressed the little corners in. So now what we're going to do is actually join these two pouches together. So what I want you to do is to find the middle of the sides. Okay, so this is the side here. Let me just bring that back. This is the side here. So if I do that, pinch my seams, and then you're just going to fold them in half. And what you could do is use the iron again to give yourself a middle point, but I'll just use my pen. I'll just give it a pinch and use my pen. And then I'll line it up on the other side and mark that centre point. So, I mean, you could put a pin in. Let's put a pin in there. I would only just put a pin in one side because that's where we're going to join the other pouch. So just open it up, pinch your side seams, fold it in half, bring those side seams together. Like I say, you could use your iron. Oh, okay. Give it a little finger press. So you've got a pinch mark there. Do a pen mark, or like I say, put a pin in. And the same on the other side, because at some point we will need a mark on the other side. So let's get a pin and pop it in there. And obviously you can measure these if you want to. So if you find that too difficult, then measure from the sides out, from the sides in, find the centre point, okay? And then you're just going to join those two. So where we've got a pin on this side here, this little pin here, we've got this little pin here, we're just going to join those two together. So I'll take that pin out. I've got my marks, so I know I've got both in the centre. So now you can see I've pinned them together, and we're going to mark 2 inches out from that centre line. So again, I'm going to use my ruler. So again, you could use a pin. I think let's use a pin this time. And you're bringing the 2 pieces together. So mark 2 inches. Make sure you're not using a ruler that's got a 2.5 inch mark, which is, I nearly just did that. So bring the two pieces together. You'll find this easier when you've got it flat on your desk in front of you. I'm trying to hold it up so you can see a little bit of what I'm doing. So there's my first, there's my centre, and that's my first 2 inch. So let's mark again from this centre out. Let's get it lined up straight. Get them really super neat. Okay, so now if we look at it, and you see how that looks. So I've got my centre pin, and then I've got a pin either side 2 inches out. I've just seen a thread, but I think I can live with it. Okay, so now we're going to join those two together. So you're literally, I personally would go as close to those folds as I can. So we've already got one line of top stitching, and you could just go over the top, but the possibilities of actually catching the top stitching the other side perfectly is pretty slim. So I would go as near to the top of the folds as a second line. You hardly notice. So I'm just going to pop that under the machine. So just make sure, I'm going to do a pen mark there so I don't lose my my 2 inch line. Happy with that now. And just make sure those edges are sitting right on top of each other. Do a little back stitch, nothing too ugly. So 2 stitches max. And then we're going really close to the top of the fold. Turn my stitch length down a little bit. And then we're coming up to the second pin now. So I'm just popping my finger there so I know where to stop stitching. 2 little back stitches. That's nice and neat. And there is, we've joined those 2 pieces together. And obviously if you've got any threads, we'll just trim them. Not too bad. And we've joined the 2 pouches together. Okay? Right, so the next thing is to actually, we'll put this to one side. And we're going to now stitch the base and the outer together. Now I always do this a particular way because it's just easier. So your piece should just about go round. You'll have probably a ½ an inch spare, which is intentional. I very rarely make it so it's absolutely exact because it depends on your stitching and your cornering as to whether that's going to meet up. So I always start with my outer piece, which has got Decaville light on it, loose if you like. I haven't joined the 2 short ends together, and there's my base. Now what I want to do is to find the center point of the sides. So let's give that a little clip. It's my good starting off point because what I want to do is where that center notch is, that's ideally that's where my join seam will be with my outer piece. So when I start stitching, I actually start about a ½ an inch from the end, perhaps a little bit more, 3/4 of an inch from the end. So I'll start stitching about here, right sides together with this. But what I will do is make sure that that sits fairly neatly over the top of my notch, and then 1/4 of an inch over, and that way when the 2 come together I know that that seam is going to be pretty central, and it's a good way of doing it because it allows for the sort of adjustability of your stitching. And I say that with all kind words because it depends whether we have our raw edges dead on top of each other. It depends on how we do the cornering, whether you cut the corners off as you go round. There's lots of factors come into this. So this is how I like to do it. Works a treat. So your right sides together over the top. Now I'll show you on the overhead how that looks, because sometimes it's not always easy to see on a pattern. So if I pin it, Oh, I want to make sure I've got my fabric, yeah, one of my birds going the right way. I don't think it matters too much, but so on the overhead, I want you to have a quick look. There's my notch. You see my notch there, and I've overhung that by, well, actually it's probably a bit too much, by 1/2 inch, but let's bring it back a bit. There we go. And so I've overhung it by just over the 1/4 inch. I'm quite happy with that. Although I've stuck my Decaville light down, if I need to trim it back, I can still peel that back and trim it away. But I'm usually quite happy with how things work out. So I'm going to start stitching about where my pin is. So it's a little bit away from the notch, you can see. And then make my way around the base. Now, as I come to each corner, as I stitch to each corner, I'm going to lay that down there so you can see. Let's get that red pen in again. Do you see, so let me just get that straight. Do you see we've got the square of the box here? Okay, but we've got the straight of the outer. So what I do is I cut, not quite 1/4 inch, but I cut in to my outer. Okay, so I just give it a little snip, nothing too drastic, just make sure you've got a nice pair of sharp scissors, which these are not. There we go. And it means that I can stitch to this point, and then I can turn the whole thing, and that V opens up. Let's see if we can do it without there we go. Let's do that. I could pin it so it's easier, and then this will come round, and then you'll have that open V there. Do you see? It's much better when it's on the machine and you're stitching it. And it's just a lovely, lovely, easy way of popping an outer on to a base. And it doesn't matter whether this is a circle or a square or rectangle. It's all the sort of same. Little back stitch just to start, coming down to that first corner. So I'm going to stop 1/4 inch away. You might want to measure this in some way. So I'm going to lift my needle up, lift my foot up, keep my needle in, and I'm going to swivel the whole thing around. Now you might find, did you see me wriggling that there? You might find that your needle, the fabric sticks around the needle, so you need to sort of wiggle it to make sure that it's sitting correctly. Okay, and then what I do is I do a little back stitch right in that corner there. So where I've snipped, I'm actually giving it, although the snip doesn't come right up to the stitch line, I'm giving it a little bit of strength by doing a few little back stitches. So now it's easy peasy down the side here. Try and stick to your 1/4 inch. And as you come down, I'm going to cut into my outer. So I'm going to stop 1/4 inch away, swivel, just wriggle it on the machine. Little back stitch. And then come down. Snip. And it lined up. I'll do a little back stitch there actually. It's close, I was close with my snipping. Give it a wriggle, lift that foot up, wriggle it all. Sometimes it just doesn't want to play. It gets stuck, it really does. A few little back stitches just to give that corner stability. You don't want it coming undone. Like I say, don't snip right into that sort of 1/4 inch seam line. And I can be guilty of that. So a little snip. 1/4 inch, I'm going to stop. A bit more. Put up. Swivel it, give it a wriggle. And then as you come round to where you started, that's it. as you come round to where you started, little back stitch to start again, I would stop again half an inch away from that notch. So line it all up. Keep an eye on your notch. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to show you on the overhead. And there is a picture of this, but it's never always desperately clear. My Decaville's coming away. Always does. Doesn't matter how well I steam it. Anyway, so you can see, look, this is how it looks. So let me do it that way. So you'll end up, can you see, now that's a good picture because you can see the notch is there. And so I know that's really where I want to put my seam if I can. If it's slightly off centre, I don't think anybody's going to pick you up for that. So you're just going to make sure that those, first of all, you've got enough fabric, which I have. I say it's about half an inch too much, and I'm right. Just bring those edges together. We've done this before, so hopefully you'll be confident with that. And then you pinch it. Okay, and that is where your seam is going to be. So you don't want it tight. So I haven't, although I've got a little bit of gap in my stitching here, I haven't sort of pulled it together. I've kept it quite loose. That's my stitch line. So what I tend to do is get a pin and pin it. And like I said to you, when you come to do this, you may well find that your Decaville, and I'll show you because it's always good to see, that your Decaville is going to be on your stitch line. Now that's up to you whether you peel that Decaville back, trim it. I'll leave that for you to decide. I'm just going to stitch it and trim back. So in this instance, it's about just over the 1/4 inch too big, which is absolutely perfect. That's how I plan these things. Oh, hi there. Thank you for stopping by. I was going to talk to you about the Gold Club actually, and I'm preparing for our Facebook Live tonight because every week on Facebook in the Gold Sewing group, we actually do other things like free motion embroidery tonight. So the Gold Online Sewing Group, what is all that about? Well, if you go to my website, lizzycurtis.com, you'll see the sign up tab. Click on that, you get a choice of membership, but what you do get every month is 2 different super patterns, especially for you. And do you know what? When they go in the shop the next month, they're $4.99 each. So this is an absolute bargain for £5, about $6.20, something like that. You're getting those 2 full patterns with video tutorials as well. So why don't you join up today and join the online sewing group, which is known as the Gold Sewing Group. I'll see you there. Bye. So now I'm just coming down. Just make sure I've got that in the right place. Hold on. Let's move that over a bit. There we go. So you can either go from where you've pinned, or you can do what I've done and gone from the top down. So now you've stitched that side seam, you can trim that away now. But I would make sure that it does fit your box before you trim, just in case. Okay, so now that fits beautifully. You're just going to open that seam up and you're just going to finish stitching across there. So let's just do that. So I'm going to start just a 1/4 inch away from where I stopped. I'm opening my seam up. And just stitch straight across. It's only about a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch. So now I've join the box and the outer, the box base and the outer together. That's absolutely perfect. And if you want to give that seam a finger press or a press, just to open it all up and make it super neat. There we go, you can see there. Right, so the next stage is to put our kind of sides in, because if you have a look at that now, there's no shape to it. It'll end up looking like an oval if we didn't put the side seams in. So we're going to give it like a faux seam, if you like. So we just need to get the right measurements for this. I'm just going to turn the page. Here we go. It's 2.25 from this center line here. So on the side, on the one of the short sides, we've got the seam. So we know it's 2 1/4 inches out from that seam, but we don't know on this other end. So I need you to mark that so you know exactly where that center seam is. So I would find the center here. Do you remember we did a notch in that base of where the center is? So I want you just to draw that line up there so you know where that center is of that side seam. So let's just do that. So it's just there. In fact, let me lie it flat, it might be easier. I'm going to lie it flat, draw a line. So this is just where you need to get your angle. So you need a straight angle going across the base of your box and then up. I'll show you on the overhead. So as long as you've found your center, which is here, so if we zoom in on that, you can see there's my center of my base. So I just want to make sure that my ruler sits absolutely flat. Let's try. I needed a smaller ruler really, and I'm not sure I've got one handy. You never do when you need it quickly, do you? Never mind. A smaller ruler helps. So I'm just going to pop that in there. Let's do it that way. And just make sure. There we go. Get a little ruler. Is that line is sitting on that baseline absolutely perfectly. So when you draw this line here, it's going to be 90-degree angle. So you know that's absolutely perfect. And of course we can continue that up. So I know now that's the center of my box. Give it a little, put a little notch in if you want. I find it always useful to notch. And the other thing you can do is to open that up and find the center of the outsides as well. So I'll just open that up, bring the side seams together like that, and just give that a little notch as well. There we go. And it's difficult to do that beforehand because like I've always say, it depends on your stitching as to how your outer is going to fit. Okay, so we've got everything marked now. So from this center seam on the two short ends, we're going to mark out 2 1/4 inches. So again, get your ruler and let's get the right measurement here. So it's 2 1/4 inches from that center line. So again, I'm just going to pop a little pen mark in. 2 1/4 mark. Okay, let's have a look at that on the overhead. So it's 4 1/2. Let's do it so you can see. So it's 4 1/2 across. So you can see my 2 1/4 inches is sitting on the notch in the center. So I've marked that little one on the left and on the right as well. Okay, same with this side. So you'll have opened up this seam and pressed it, or finger press it if that helps. There we go. So it's 2 1/4 out. 2 1/4 out. Okay, I quite like doing this bit. So where you've made your little mark, so as I said to you before, you measure from here to here, you get your mark. You're just going to pinch that, and when you pinch it, I want you to pinch it so it's lined up with the corner. So if I open that up, pinch it, there we go. Give it a squidge. And so you're getting that sort of effect. And then you're just going to stitch 1/16 of an inch. Really, a really small seam. It's not doing anything other than giving you a faux seam. Take it down to the bottom. So the same again, then on all the other corners. So pinch at the corner, pinch at the top, and just make sure, because my Decaville's coming away a bit, just make sure you have got that fabric all caught. I don't want you just to stitch the Decaville. If you've pressed it well, it'll be fine. It actually likes to be pressed with a damp cloth. That's how the manufacturers recommend. I always think I can beat the system. It doesn't pay off. So do what the manufacturers say. Use a damp cloth. It's funny old stuff. It's a bit like a faux sort of, like a lamb's leather almost. Yeah. And the other thing, what I remember now, is when you pinch this, make sure that your long side and your short side are sitting parallel here. So they're not sort of off at an angle. So they're both sitting, the raw edges are sitting nicely. And then you know you've got it squared up. So all the way down to the bottom. Just make sure that you're catching the fabric, as I said. Like I say, it is purely decorative, really. It's to give it structure, so it becomes that box you want it to be, rather than an oval. So just push everything out. There we go, and that's giving you a better structure in the corners, like that. Okay, so now we need to put the handles on, and now the handles are not stabilised. You can stabilise them if you wish, if you want them to be a little bit more rigid, and entirely up to you. But all I've done is folded my long edges to the middle and then folded again, so we get a 1-inch strap. And you're going to attach these a 1/4 inch away from those seams that we just did. So it's a 1/4 inch away from those corner seams. So it's right sides together. And then just make sure you don't twist them. So 1/4 inch from that seam. And obviously, you know, you can pin to make sure you've got them in place. So let's just hold those up. So can you see what they look like? So do the same the other side. I can't remember if I didn't stabilise. I'm thinking, did I stabilise the other ones? Well, I didn't. I didn't think I had, but sometimes you sort of doubt yourself. I suppose it depends what sort of fabric you're using. Whether you think, if you're using like a polycotton, that probably would be better with a stabiliser. So a lot of these things are sort of open to interpretation, aren't they? So there's our handles in place. Now all we have to do is to put one inside the other. Now, with this one, we've already got our our top seams top stitched. So this is all ready to put together with that to make it super neat. But we haven't folded the top edge over and pressed that. So it's ready to take this and then top stitch the two together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go off camera now, and I'm going to just press my top seam of my box to inside. So we've got a neat 1/4 inch top ready to top stitching. There's a lot of tops going on there, so I'll just go off and do that. So what I've done is I've just gone round with my iron and I've folded under that 1/4 inch and I've given it a press. So all I'm going to do is actually now marry these up. So don't forget, we've done our notches, so just follow where your notches are. So for instance, where this seam meets here, that's going to be on the center notch of this side here. Okay, now I can see where I've made the notch, so just make sure, so pop that in, wrong sides together, and where that notch is, I'm joining up the seam and the notch. So what you're doing is opening up. So do you remember we stitched those two together, but we didn't stitch right to the end. So we have got a definite finish, and then I'm just going to match that up to the notch. And that way we make sure that that center seam of our pouches sits right where it needs to be, in the center of the box. Otherwise it'll be twisted. So there's the two. Can you see how that works now? So those are the two sides, if you like, put in place. But all I would do is sort of work around and just make sure that you've got everything sort of lined up. So I don't have a notch that side, but I did have a pen mark, but I've given it an iron. So just make sure you've got your middles and your notch lined up. That's probably quite crucial. So I just kind of give it I kind of pull it so I get the furthest point, so that gives me the center, if you like. And just sort of meet those up. Put a clip in to hold. And then the rest will just follow along. You might need to perhaps adjust as you go, but that should fit absolutely 100%. So all you're doing is you're bringing the two folded edges together, a bit like when we made the pouch. So the two folded edges are sitting together. If we look on the overhead, you'll see what that looks like. There we go, it's beautiful. So we've got two folded edges, one that we've ironed, this one, and one we've top stitched already, which is this one, and they just literally come together. So you're not doing a massive seam here. I just want you to do a 1/16 of an inch along here just to join the two together, but obviously you want to make sure that they are sitting right close together. You know, the two folded edges are sitting right close together. So you might want to pin this. Use quilter's tape just to glue them together temporarily, so you know that's going to sit nicely. And also what you could do is when you've finished, you could edge that with some rickrack, something like that. If you're not keen on your top stitching. So always think, what else can you do to make your design unique to you? So because I haven't got a free arm, I'm going to stitch from the inside out. So I'm going to tip my piece like that. If you've got a free arm, it might be easier if you do it you know, under the free arm. But we have got that center section that could get in the way. See how you get on. So I've just removed one of my clips just to get my presser foot in. Little back stitch. Now obviously you decide where you're going to start stitching, because if you do too big a back stitch and it's right in the centre of your work, you'll see it, and it could be a little irritating. So just make sure that like I say, the top edges are sitting together. I'm doing about a 1/16 of an inch from the top. Like I say, you've only got a 1/4 inch anyway to play around with, and just gently go. You don't pull or tug anything, because it will all fit. And the other thing, of course, you might want to go from the outside where you can see that top stitching, so you know it's going to be super neat. But I'm just trusting my instincts here. Not always a good thing. But like I said, you could glue some lace, you could glue some rickrack. You know, there's lots of different things that you can do to cover up your stitchings if you think, oh my gosh, that's not as neat as I would have liked. Sometimes when we're in a hurry. So when you come to the dividing seam, you know, we've got the divider in the middle. Obviously that divider comes right up to the top of the seam line. I would just sort of go round it. You still got to make sure that the two pieces are stitched together, but I wouldn't fret about the fact that you've got no room there. I just go straight across. Because we're only doing a tiny little seam, you absolutely will not notice that. So I've done one half, so now I'm coming around the other half. And your bag handles, your pouch handles will sort of sit inside. If you've pressed that 1/4 inch, they will sit inside. Oh yes, that's the other thing I was going to say. Before you do this bit, if you want to add a little bit of stability to your boxy pouch, your carry, whatever you want to call it, fill the bottom with plastic beads, or something of your choice that's of a heavy weight, just a few, and that'll keep the base of this solid on your desk. So whatever you put in there, it's not going to topple this over. So I would say, I probably now actually, because I'm about a quarter left to do, I'll perhaps take it off the machine, put some beads in there, and then carry on stitching, and they will naturally fall to the bottom. So just coming round, take my last clip out. Got some threads there which I need to trim. Just make sure that those folded edges are sitting together. It might take a little bit of trial and error to make sure that, well, I would say just careful stitching and keeping your eye on those two layers. I mean, quilter's tape is absolutely your best friend. We're just coming over that last little bit now. Not back stitches, no need. Doesn't need that sort of strength. And you can see it fits absolutely superbly. Got a few little raw stitches there. There we go. Could do with a little bit of a press. But there we are. There's our Sara. Like I say, it needs a press. But that's our second version. So there we are. There we go. Got the pockets inside, you've got your dividers. That just helps everything sort of stay in one place. And of course, like I said, if you wanted to, you could add some lace, but also you could add, I'm into rickrack at the moment. Look at that. That would look so pretty, wouldn't it? So you could go round again. Yeah. But when you come to these bits here, you're literally just sort of just going over the top of your seam, but it's a tiny little seam we've got going on there. It's about 1/16 of an inch. So there we are. I'm really pleased with her. Just needs a press. So that is Sara. That's our project for one of our projects for September. That's the pattern that you'll download. You'll probably get a different picture to this at the front. We're still in our editing stages, and this is the one that I made to match my top. And this is the one we've got now, which is in the lovely sort of purples and blues. I've got my birds up going the right way as well, which is just a miracle really. So I hope you enjoyed the video tutorial. I hope you make some, because they're going to be super duper useful, and I'd love to see some of your pictures.